Hello and welcome to a Slice and Dice Heroes tier list. I have been playing a lot of this game lately, and I want to take the time out of my night to organize my thoughts a little bit, tell you how I feel about the characters and such. So that's what I'm gonna do. I recognize this video is going to be long because there are 100 heroes for me to talk about. I'm gonna do my best to keep it to about 2 minutes per character, but that's still gonna be almost like an hour and a half, so we'll see. I'm gonna do it all, one sitting, one take. I'm gonna do a lot of pausing though because I have the game open in the background here. Let me organize. I got the game open here with the almanac, so when I talk about a hero, I will bring them up in the almanac so you can see what they do just in case you're unfamiliar. But let's begin, shall we? So starting off, I don't actually know the base heroes' names off the top. Who is this? This is Thief. Okay. My list is unorganized here, and I thought about sorting it and then went, hell no. But Thief is this character. So a few notes before we start getting into it here. I'm going to be ordering them, you're gonna have to just listen to my reasoning for when I place characters. For the tier 1s, I'm going to base them based on how strong they are in relation to the other starting tier 1s, and then the tier 2s are going to be just contextually from there. So starting us off with Thief. Thief here is, let me bring up the game for you. It is this one. Sorry, game's a little tiny. Hang on. I gotta fix this. Don't worry, it'll make sense here in a sec. There we go. I had to organize the scene. The Thief is this character, which is bow, sword, and then 3 X's. Let me hide the window now, and then I will begin. So, Thief is, in my opinion, a C tier orange starter. I think when I talk about the starters, what I care about is their consistency to get me out of the fights quickly. By the way, before I continue, I should mention this is for win streaking on Classic Hard, and I will be talking about the context things like curses and how those impact as well, where necessary. So, I think Thief is mostly just a problem of 3 X's is very bad. My loot, so far, a lot of the losses on my win streaks have been I just rolled 3 straight turns of 3 X's from my characters and got sent. That happens often, but it doesn't happen all that often to Thief, and Thief has the added benefit of 1 range side. 2 damage ranged will kill an archer, which is good. But overall, I'm going to plant Thief firmly in the C tier. I think that they are not the worst. Now I'm going to do pauses between when I go, because I have to go locate the next hero. So just be aware that I'm going to pause pretty frequently in this video to get everything set up. Okay, I've thought about it a little more. I'm going to do these in batches for the starters here. So I'm going to show you the 3 orange heroes in tier 1, and I'm going to then rank them. Pause, find the yellows, show you the yellows, repeat. So we have Scoundrel here, who has 1 damage vulnerable, 1 damage cleave, and 4 X's. We have the Lost, who has, importantly, 3 HP. I haven't mentioned it, but Scoundrel has 6 HP, Thief has 4 HP. HP also matters. But Lost has 1 damage ranged poison, 2 single damage cruels, a double damage cruel, and a dodge side, and then 1 X. And then Dabble, who has heal 5, block 2, 2 single mana sides, a 2 damage side, and a 1 damage side with 5 HP. And so, I've organized them here. This is gonna come, I'll do this rapid fire and then I'll talk about it real quick. So Scoundrel goes D tier. I think Lost goes like B, top of B, and then Dabble goes just below Lost. So my feeling for the strength of oranges right now is Lost, Dabble, Thief, Scoundrel in that order. I might end up making like a B plus tier because there are so many heroes. I'll figure it out, but for now. Why do I feel this way? Well, Scoundrel goes D tier because Scoundrel has 4 X's. The 2 sides that he does have are good. Cleave is good and Vulnerable is very good. However, this is a character very prone to rolling 3 X's. That is awful at the start of the run. Lost goes at the top of the orange heroes because Lost, despite only having 3 HP, has a lot of damage and it's very consistent. You can sneak a lot of value out of this character. Having a starter that can do 4 damage, particularly on the first boss can lead to killing bosses way faster than you would otherwise be able to. The 3 HP is a downside, and you have to watch Lost, you have to protect them, but overall, I think that Lost is the best of the orange heroes by a little bit. Dabble is fine. I just think Dabble is fine. There's nothing to say. You're not always going to get something good, because sometimes you'll roll the 5 heal on a turn where everyone's full HP, but for the most part, Dabble will pull something useful to help you out. However, Dabble is not a main damage dealer in your run. You do have to be aware that a lot of times your orange will be rolling something defensive, which is not ideal. Yeah, so that's orange starters. I'm actually gonna try to organize all of the starters. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I ended up putting them all in order because I realized that there were only a few that were out of position. So let's go into the yellows now. Let me bring up the game, scroll up in the almanac, and that'll bring us to the yellow starters. So we have Fighter here who has 5 HP, 2-2-1-1-1-1 for damage and shields, nothing exciting. Brigand, also 5 HP, has 2-3 damage exerts and then some self shields, some single hits. Ruffian, who has 4 HP, importantly, and then this is 5 damage pain, a 1 damage cleave, and 2 singles and a 2 damage block. And then Hoarder, 6 HP, and a variety of sides here. He has like every keyword. You have a 1 damage Death Wish, 2 damage Heavy, 1 damage Rampage, 1 damage Engage, a 2 damage Pain, and a 2 damage Single Use. Probably the only single use 2 damage in the game. Not sure though. Let me get this out of here. So, the biggest problem I have with the yellows is one of them's... Oh, there he is. Hoarder got swapped. I feel like one of my problems is that they all look the same to me, but in terms of the tier 1 starters, I'm going to say I'm not 100% sure. I know I rank Ruffian the highest of them. I'll give him A. I think he's very good. The ability to do 5 damage at the start of the game, even with the drawback of it killing him, is huge. It's so good. Most of the time, if you deal the 5 damage pain side a single time, you've probably won the fight. It kills gnolls, it kills zombies. There's not many zombies at the start of the game, but it kills gnolls. It like half health or third health bosses. It does a lot. And it's not too hard to meet the requirement of it not killing him, and even if it does kill him, usually you just get out of the fight. It's not too bad. I'm gonna put Fighter in C tier. 4 of his sides are 1 damage or 1 shielding, which is just really underwhelming. The 2s are good, but I need it to be more doable to get 2s. Similarly, I'm gonna, for the same reason, put Brigand. I think this is Brigand. I might get the naming wrong, but I believe this is Brigand who had the 3 damage exerts. Same thing. 1 damage self shield is underwhelming. 3 damage exert is slightly better, but the exert is a negative. I don't mind it too much, but it's still pretty bad. And Hoarder can go B tier. Hoarder has a lot of situations where he just randomly pops off. Specifically with Rampage, you'll just occasionally wipe out entire floors. And he can also act as a nice little benefit to Ninja. So he's probably so yeah. Ruffian, Hoarder, Brigand, Fighter for my starting yellows. I think they're all okay. But, like, realistically, if I'm trying to keep the tiers in order, it should be like this, I think. I'll do my best to keep the tiers in order, but I think I'm going to end up adding more tiers and moving things around as we go. Alright. Yeah, the starters I'm going to kind of breeze through. We got the grays next, and bring the game back up. Sometimes it takes OBS a second to pick up the game. There it is. So, in the grays we have Defender, who has 7 HP, 3-2-1, and then 2 single hit shields. Buckle, who has, this is pristine, so it's shield 2 and it does double if you're full, 2 2s and a 2 damage heavy. Squire, who has focus shield 2, which can do 4 if it is targeting the same target as the previous dice. A focus attack for 1, which goes to 2, and then 2 of the hand, which is redirection. We have I already said Squire. We got Alloy as the last one, 4 HP importantly. It's 7654 on these guys. But Alloy has engage shield, so double on targets with full HP, a cleanse, a cleave, a double use, a repel, which deals 1 to the targets that are attacking the one that you put the shield on, and interestingly, a mana gain. All of those are at 1. Get out of here. So, and I lost my tab. Here it is. So, I think the best of these, this is not going to come as much of a surprise, or perhaps it will. The grays are, in terms of how powerful they are as starters, I think it is harder because gray is a much more supportive color than yellow and orange are. Gray is here to help keep your team alive, typically, and they're not winning the game for you, they're just helping you along. So, with that, they're going to end up ranked a little lower in overall power, but ranking the starters by power is kind of weird. I'm going to do something like this, I think. Buckle is okay, but really struggles because he just has 2 bad sides. He has 2 X's, which are dead. I think that Alloy could even go top of D tier, which I think I will just for now. I think that the problem with Alloy is that 1 is just not a big enough number. That's what it comes down to. 1 shield cleave, 1 shield mana gain. It just doesn't do much. And for 4 HP, I'm not a big fan. I should respect Squire slightly more. Squire's better than Buckle. The focus abilities are really good. Having an option to do 2 on your gray is something that none of the other gray starters have. And then Defender I rank highly primarily because Defender does really well with Ruffian. Defender is very good at keeping Ruffian alive where the others can struggle a little bit, but all around I think Defender is the best of the grays because he has 2 1 damage sides, which, while not great, all you really care about at the start of the game, in my experience, is damage, and the ability to shield and just make turns a washout is also fine. So, he gets the honor of being the best gray and slightly above the others. Although I could also put him like, I can see putting him here in like upper C, lower B, somewhere in there. He's like CB for me right now. But that's the grays. Let's get the reds. Sometimes the almanac closes when I tab out. So we have healer, 5 HP. Now in the reds and the blues we also have to talk about their starting spells, which I will do when we're ranking. Healer has 2/1/1 on mana and 3s on heal, and her spell is set a hero to 3 HP. Acolyte, 5 HP, spell is heal 1 to all, and then this is the vitality keyword, which grants +2 empty max HP as well as healing 2, and then this is a cleave heal for 1. We have Mystic, who has 2 deads. The Gaze gives you 1 reroll on your next turn, but has a cooldown, so you can only use it once per turn for 1. And you get 1 mana heal, 1 heal, and then 1 mana heal and shield and a mana. Or 1 mana, 1 heal, 1 shield out of that side. And then Splint's spell is heal shield 1 with cleave, but you can only do it once per combat. 4 HP, 3/2/1, and these are all single use, and then 2 5 heal single uses. And then, are they all 5 HP? All of the reds are 5 HP. I was unaware. There you go. So, again, similar to the grays, the reds are going to end up lower on the overall power level, but mostly for the starters, I'm ranking them in comparison to how powerful as they are to the others of their color, because you can reroll at the start of the run to change if you get a bad hand. So, I feel like, I don't know, I actually haven't critically thought about these. I'm gonna pull the thing back up for a second. I need to look at them again, just to remember who's who. You're gonna hear some clicks while I look at them. Okay, I'm gonna go... I want to put one of them in B tier, and I think it's Healer. I think my second favorite, even though they have 2 negatives, or 2 like X sides, is Acolyte. I'm gonna put Splint third, and I'm going to put... I've already forgotten your name. What is this character's name? Acolyte? Oh, Mystic. Sorry, I got Acolyte and Mystic mixed up. Acolyte is going in the bottom. Acolyte is the one with the 2 max HP and the 1 manas, and Mystic is the one with the mana gain. The mana gain shield side. So, Healer has 3 mana gain sides, and that's good, and one of them is a 2, which is also good. People like to dunk on Splint, I feel. A lot of consensus I've heard is that Splint is very bad because of the single use, but in the early game, I find that single use is fine. Getting 3 mana or 2 mana out of your red at the start of a fight can just end the fight or put it to a point where you will not be at risk of losing a character. And then it doesn't really matter if Splint just rolls X's for the rest of the run, or the rest of the combat, I should say. These two, they just don't really do much. The heal 1, shield 1, mana gain 1 side is really good, and then the rest of, or I'm gonna mix up their names, but one more look. Hold on, I'll remember their names this time, I'm sure. Yeah, the rest of, sorry, it's Mystic is the one with the heal 1, mana 1, shield 1. The rest of this character's sides are pretty bad, but heal, shield, mana gain 1 is good, and then Acolyte, I don't know what to say, man. It's just underwhelming. The heal 1 to all spell is pretty good though, but I think this character just doesn't do a lot. And I will go... I've also, what I wanted to say is I thought about clearing this out when we get into the tier 2s. I think I'll let it go, but just know that the tier 1s are hard to compare to tier 2s and beyond. But that's what I'm here to do. Okay, I need to pull up the game, hit you with this button, and we'll go through the blues. So blue has Mage, 4 HP, 2 mana, 2 mana, 1 mana, 1 mana, and his spell is for 4, deal 5 damage. We have Student, 3 X's, the side that gives you target hero can use their dice again, and then 2 single mana shields. Spell is Slice, 1 damage to all. Initiate, +1 mana cantrip, +1 mana growth, and then 3 single use mana gains, and then the side is, or the spell is Gather, replace blank sides with +2 mana this turn. And lastly, Cultist. He has 4, 3, 2, 1, and these are all mana gain with Pain. He has 5 HP, and he has 1 damage single use self heal. His spell is Cut, deal 3 damage to an ally, 2 damage to the topmost enemy. So, I will rapid fire this one. I hate Student. I think Student's terrible. This character does so little. The only redeeming quality is that he brings a very good spell in Slice. However, it's extremely hard to cast that spell because you're relying on your red starter for mana gain. I'm a big Student hater. I think he's hands down the worst starter. Mage is good. I'm gonna give Mage top of B tier. Mage's spell is very good. The biggest problem that Mage faces is that it's hard to get to cast that spell on turn 1. You'll often be waiting to turn 2 or 3, which I think is a little bit unfortunate for Mage. However, the spell is still good. 2 mana gain is good. He gives you a lot of flexibility. A shame about the 2 X's though. Initiate is, I think, top of B, or you know what? No, top of C, not bottom of B. Initiate is okay. Particularly, now I play with everything unlocked, so you may or may not have unlocked the Bramble boss. Initiate makes the Bramble boss unlosable. The Bramble boss is a boss that has an aura effect that makes all of your dice single use. There are certain curse modifiers that can make that fight hard to win, specifically Stitch. Initiate counteracts that boss and makes it, I mean, it's hard to lose to the first boss anyway, on hard. However, it becomes a lot easier to not lose a character with Initiate because of the spell, because when your dice becomes single use, it becomes an X. So Initiate turns those X's back to mana, which is great. And then getting the honor of best starter hero is Cultist. I think Cultist is crazy. The ability to roll 4 or even 3 mana on this character wins you the fight. It's so good, and on top of this, there are some fight configurations where the topmost enemy will be in the back, and you can't hit them with spells, except Cut only cares about it being the top enemy, doesn't care if they're in the back, so you can just pick an archer off with him, make a goblin flee. He's really good. I cannot stress it enough. I'm excited when I see this character. And yeah, so this is it for the tier 1s. I think that it's not too crazy to say that almost every tier 1 is playable. In hard, I've had a lot of trouble dying on tier 1s. I I think that some of them I'll keep for longer than others though, like Ruffian and Cultist. However, Ruffian falls off pretty hard once you get around to like combat 8, because 4 HP is just really rough. Cultist, honestly there are runs where I upgrade from a tier 1 to a tier 2 with Cultist and I end up feeling like I got worse, so, you know, he's very strong. I've been thinking about it. I have decided I'm going to actually... Okay, so here's my thinking, right? On the one hand, it feels weird to compare tier 2s to tier 1s, but on the other hand, you are actively making a choice between keeping another tier 1 or upgrading to tier 2. However, I think this is going to become a little monstrous. I'll do the oranges and then I will see how I feel. So, let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the game again. And we're going to look at all of the orange heroes for tier 2. Now, you're going to also get to see my pick rates here now, so this is also a little bit of a stats reveal. Prepare yourselves. I will not spoil much, hopefully, here with my thoughts, but we have Trapper, who has 2 of the 1 damage vulnerable sides, kill an enemy with 4 or less HP, which is ranged, shield 2 growth, and a blank and a dodge, and 7 HP. Ninja, who has 3 1 damage copycats, a 2 damage double use, and a dodge at 6 HP. Copycat, if you didn't catch that, it'll copy all keywords from the last used dice. Dabbler, who has 7 HP, a 3, a 2 on damage, a 2 mana, 4 heal, and then 2 2s for block. Rogue, 2 1 mana poisons, 2 1 mana cantrips, which just deal the damage whenever you roll it, a dodge, and a 2 damage cruel. I think I said 1 mana, 1 damage, 7 health. I don't know if I covered that also. In the Spellblade here, Spellblade an orange with a spell, shockingly, but we have 1 damage mana gain, 1 mana, 1 damage poison, 1 damage copycat, and the spell is a single use +1 to the target's damage sides. So, and it only costs 1. Once per fight you get to give a +1 to someone. Juggler, who deals 2 damage, cantrip, 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage, and then 1 damage shield, or 1 shield cantrip rather, with an X. Ranger, 2 X's, but a 1 damage ranged cleave, a 2 damage ranged, a 2 damage ranged engage, and lastly, Gambler, a 5 damage, a 2 damage, a 1 damage, and 3 X's. I didn't call out all of the HPs, but I think they might actually all be 7s. They are all 7s. How about that? Okay. So, hopefully you have a good feeling for the characters. I am now going to start rating them. I'm gonna go ahead, this one's, you could maybe see it coming from the pick rate, but Trapper goes S tier. Trapper particularly is strong because of how that left side works. Sorry, this chair is creaking, it's driving me nuts. I'm gonna change how I'm sitting. Trapper's 4 damage, it isn't 4 damage, it's kill an enemy with less than 4 HP. This bypasses a ton of mechanics, so if you kill an enemy that is set to spawn a Slimelet, it doesn't count, because they never take the damage that would have spawned the Slimelet. You kill one of the sisters on the boss fight, where they have the side that, or the health that deals damage. If you use Trapper to kill that, that health never deals damage. He bypasses a lot of mechanics. The big one too is it bypasses the slates. You only have to hit a slate once and then hit them with this. There's a lot to say about Trapper. It's also ranged. I could go on and on. But, as if that wasn't enough, he also has 2 vulnerable sides, which is a crazy amount of value. And he has a dodge in case you are having him take 1,000,000 for some reason, which often doesn't happen to orange and blues, because most of the time they are less likely to be targeted by cleaves. However, you get the idea. Trapper offers a ton of utility in the vulnerable and the ability to save himself, and he offers the ability to just bypass and kill enemies at 4 or less HP, no matter where they are. He's great. He's, I think without a doubt, the best orange, tier 2. Now, Ninja had a really high pick rate. Despite that, I'm gonna put Ninja like middle B tier. I think that Ninja is super reliant on the other character being good, your yellow or your gray. Someone has to activate Ninja for you, otherwise this character is horrific, really bad. However, when they work really well. And you can copy some pretty crazy stuff to win. So, you know, Ninja's pretty sweet sometimes, but I'm just gonna move on. I don't have anything else to say about Ninja. I think they are average. Dabbler, I'm gonna put Dabbler a little higher in B tier than Ninja. I think Dabbler could go like middle, like upper middle B tier. I like Dabbler because Dabbler is consistent. That's all there is to it. I talked earlier about how I don't like big dead roll characters. Dabbler can't roll a bad side. Sometimes, again, much like Dabbler, you'll roll a heal where you don't need it, but whatever. Honestly, still good. Rogue can go into A tier. I think Rogue is strong. The ability to poison enemies is good, and the cantrips are usually a positive, so I like Rogue. Also, much like Lost, the cruel side can just spike a boss down in the mid-game. Very strong. This is... Sorry, I got cheat. Oh, this is Spellblade. I haven't seen Spellblade lately, but I like Spellblade. I'm gonna also put Spellblade in A tier. That might be a little high. Spellblade's like a B+ character to me, but we'll put him bottom of A for now. I think the biggest value that Spellblade brings is the ability to give a random +1, because a lot of times that +1 will let you do things like cleave a backline enemy down and stop them from doing damage, or cleave an enemy into a range where they die to bones, or +1 for like a damage from all from whirl, things like that. +1s, they can be surprisingly powerful, even though it may not seem like it. Juggler. Oh, Juggler. I love Juggler. However, it would be in bad faith if I rank Juggler anything higher than a B. If I put Juggler higher than Ninja, I am just kidding you, because Juggler is a lot of fun, and Juggler also dies as soon as you see a Thorns or a Spiker. Juggler just kills himself. However, there's some pretty fun stuff you can combo with Juggler, like growth on the sides, if you can find that trinket. I think, or that item I should say, I think there's an item that gives growth to all sides. It's been a while, so I'm not super up on the items. I'll put Juggler directly below Ninja. Now, this is Ranger. Ranger has 2 X's, and I am a big hater of 2 X's. However, despite that, Ranger just brings so much value. It's so hard to rank Ranger low, because I feel like Ranger, even though you have 2 X's, 1 damage ranged cleave can do so much work. It's crazy. It kills so many things for you. It adds so much, especially if you can give it a +1 from somewhere. And the engage side as well can chunk 4 or even 6 off of a boss. It's really just too much value to rank low. I'm gonna give it A tier, actually. Now, Gambler goes hard D tier. Gambler is my least favorite character in the game. I have talked, and I have been talked to a lot about Gambler, I feel like. Gambler sucks. I mean, I'm just gonna put it simply. Now, there are a lot of things that you can think about this ranking, and there are items that will mitigate Gambler's badness. However, this is gonna come up again later with item synergies. I think a lot of times... Okay, Gambler falls off, I guess, is how I want to put it, right? Gambler has a side that deals 5 damage. In the first 10 combats, that's great. In the second 10 combats, it's a little more questionable as to how valuable it's going to be. The other 2 sides that deal 2 and 1 damage in the first half of the game are okay and pretty bad, and then the second half of the game, they're both just terrible. So you're jumping through hoops to bring a character who, depending on when you see them, is already outdated. And I also find that when I see Gambler early, I usually haven't seen an item yet to make Gambler okay. So, because there's not that many. There's Worn Arms, and I'm sure there's a few others, but I think 3 X's on a character is fine, but the rest of the character has to make up for it. Like 2 X's on Ranger is fine, because the other sides of Ranger are all very good. Gambler truly only has one side that I like. And that character, I don't like him. I mean, I think Gambler is like top 3 worst characters in the game. So, I'm gonna move on from Gambler. Just know, Gambler I think is pretty terrible. pull up the game again, scroll on down, and let's go through the yellows real quick. So we got Whirl here, 7 HP. These are 1 damage cleaves. This is a 1 shield cleave, 3 damage, and a 1 damage to all enemies side. Berserker, 4 damage, 3 damage Death Wish, 4 damage. The 4 damages do pain, and then a 1 damage cleave. Sinew, 1 damage cleave and chain. If you haven't seen chain before, it's ×2 if this shares a side or shares a keyword with the previously used die. So this sometimes does 2 damage cleave. It also has 2 4 exerts and a 2 damage shield pair. Collector, 3 damage exert, 2 damage self shield, 1 damage cleave, 1 damage focus, 2 damage ranged, and a 1 damage duplicate. The duplicate will pass it on to the rest of the team, so anyone who has a dice available will be able to use a 1 damage sword swing. Gladiator, 2 damage engage, 1 damage engage, 2 2 damage self shields, and a 2 block. I think they all have 7 again. Oh, Soldier has 6. 3 damage, 3 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 shield, 2 shield. Scrapper, this is Bloodlust, 1 damage, and this is Steel, 1 damage. And then Brute, who has a stun, 8 HP, 3 heavy, and 2 damage self shield. Alright, thank you for your service, video game. Get out of here. Okay, so. Give me a sec, I gotta collect my thoughts about this. I think Whirl is a solid, like, middle A tier for me. He's gonna end up being... He's probably the best of the yellows. I think that's a fair thing to say. And I think that a lot of the yellow heroes are competitive. I think a lot of the yellow 2s are pretty good, so it's not a crazy thing for him to be. But a lot of them are gonna end up in A tier. Berserker goes upper B though. Actually, maybe not. But Berserker goes upper B. The problem with Berserker is that you have 2 X's, and that's not the end of the world. However, I feel like on top of that, the Death Wish side isn't that good. Again, he's like a B plus A minus hero to me. You know, I want to give him A minus more than B plus because 4 damage for the time that you'll have him, kills zombies, very good. Kills skeletons, very good. I mean, what's Berserker's HP? This is something I should have double checked on. I'm pulling it up, hold on. It's 8. So he kills himself in 2 turns. He needs a little bit of support, but yeah, I mean, for the time that you see it, 4 damage pain is pretty fine. It does a lot of work, so. And he's pretty consistent at hitting it as well. The Death Wish, though, a little more suspicious because the problem that I have with it is you do 4 damage to an enemy, nothing hits you, he's probably not going to be able to proc Death Wish on the next turn unless he's getting super focused. This is Sinew. Sinew's okay. Similarly, 4 damage exert, it's a downside, but with the upside of killing enemies. 4 damage is an important number to be able to do in this game, so Sinew's pretty good as a result. I like Collector a lot. I think that the utility of the keywords is pretty solid, and yeah, I mean, I think he's just good. You get to sneak sometimes through bad fights with that duplicate side, and yeah, I mean, he's just fine. He brings decent damage. The yellows are typically your damage dealers alongside the oranges. You're building around them typically, so he does a good job of dealing with that. I'll put Gladiator in like the middle of B tier. Not too much thought. I'm not giving a whole lot of thought to where within the tier I put him, but he's like middle B tier, I think. Because he has one really good side, which is the 2 damage engage that can one-shot a lot of things for you. But he has a lot of like more or less useless sides as well. But sometimes he gets to keep himself alive with the 2 damage self-shield. The problem primarily is he goes through periods of time where he doesn't really add any value, especially in the middle of a fight when everything's already a little damaged. Suddenly the engages stop working and his damage drops off, but he's alright. He one-shots skeletons, he one-shots zombies if you roll the right side, and the 2 damage isn't terrible either. Who are you? You're Soldier. It's fine, you know, that's really all there is to it with Soldier. It's fine. He'll go like bottom of B tier to me, maybe top of C tier, you know what, top of C tier. The problem is that 3 damage is a much less good number, and I really don't want my yellow shielding all that much, so he goes top of C tier as a result. He's consistent, but he's consistently mediocre, which is why he ends up in the mediocre tier. Fuck Scrapper, man. I hate this character. I'm gonna put him bottom of C tier. I don't think he's quite D tier. Now, you know what? He's D tier. I originally, like a week ago, said to myself, you know what? I bet Scrapper isn't as bad as I thought. Steel is a good keyword, and so is Bloodlust. He's as bad as I thought. 2 X's, and at the start of a fight, he often is doing 1s or 2s. He has high upsides, but I feel like a lot has to go right for this character to match the power of, like, even just Berserker, or honestly, even just Gladiator. So there are some fights where he just gets farmed also. Like boss fights, he's really useless. A lot has to go in your favor of him being targeted and you rolling damage in order, or rolling shielding in order to make use of the steel side. And then sometimes you'll just miss the steel side anyway. Yeah, not a big fan. And then Brute is just kind of lost. He goes in the bottom of C tier. Brute doesn't really do damage. He's a pretty good support character, but I don't really want support out of my yellow tier 2s. They kind of need to be doing big numbers to help me pump through. So I think he ends up in C tier as a result, but it's close. It's close. He could be a little higher in the tier maybe, but because like I will say the stun is really good. It's often very nice, but there are also a lot of times enemies that he would end up being able to stun, I would be able to kill with a different character. So he ends up a little lower on the list as a result. Okay, let me pull the game back up. I ended up not pausing as much because it's actually not that long of a setup to get here. Alright, so let's go through the grays now. We got Armorer, 9 HP. This is Smith. I'm gonna stop pointing out all the keywords. Hopefully by now you recognize what the symbols mean. So this is Shield 1 and Smith, which is +1 damage and shield sides this turn to an ally. Monk, who has Redirect, Repel, and a Shield Cleanse, and 8 HP. The Redirect you saw on Squire, but again, he gets 3 shield for that. Bard, new keyword here of Charged on the shield. Shield 2 Charged, it gains a bonus equal to mana. Bard also has rerolls and actually mana, which is pretty rare on your grays. Warden, shields and shields and 2 damages. Statue, who is all X's and 20 HP. Cleric, who has 2 damage or 2 shield, 2 heal, 2 single manas, and a 2 cleanse shield. Sorry, not Bard. Knight, who has 3 damage exerts, 3 shield steals, and a 3 shield pristine. Again, sorry. Guardian, who has 2 X's, 2 shield engage, 1 damage cleave, and 2 shield cleave. How much health? 8. Okay. I'm gonna rapid fire through this. Armor is S material. Armor enables so many things with Smith. It makes Whirl start popping off. Anything with cleave starts killing a lot easier. Anything with poison starts killing bosses. Like armor, there are times where I go into the final boss and I have armor and I just end up keeping armor because armor is that good. And armor brings something to the table that even the tier 3s sometimes miss. Similarly, I'm actually going to give Monk S tier as well. Monk is really good. Monk, Repel is very strong. If you can buff it up from like a boost, it becomes even better. And the ability to redirect damage is extremely good. Monk turns sometimes game-losing situations where you have 2 characters dying into just him dying. And the 1 extra action on the next turn is the difference maker. Among other, also just generally pretty good. He brings a cleanse too, which is kind of interesting. Like, pretty good. Bard is different than every other gray because the other grays are pretty focused on just doing big shielding to a single target, whereas Bard is more about helping and buffing an ally, and even gives you 2 mana, which is pretty good. I don't know how I feel about Bard. I think Bard is like upper B. I'm gonna give Bard like here, probably above Dabbler. But Bard is pretty contextual. There are going to be runs where Bard's really good, there are going to be runs where Bard is awful. You gotta just kind of know. Warden Warden goes like middle C tier. The problem that Warden faces that Defender doesn't, because Warden is the better defender. By the time you reach the mid-game, you don't really want this level of defense anymore, I find, anyway, because the enemies will always outpace how much defense you're able to put up. So Warden feels a little bit outclassed. 2 damage sides out of your gray is pretty nice though. Statue. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to make a new row, and I'm going to go into this and I'm gonna call this statue tier. And I'm gonna make it like a nice light blue maybe. Statue goes in statue tier. It is impossible for me to tell you how good statue is, because statue is as good as the items you have for statue are. If you have Jester Cap, statue is probably the best character in the game. If you can give statue some sides, a 20 HP character is really good. Now, something I mentioned earlier, which is important for statues, like knowledge base, I guess, is that enemies with cleave will always be hitting your gray hero. So just having a 20 health hero is good. There are a lot of enemies with big attacks that are heavy, is the word I'm looking for, and those will guaranteed hit statue. So there's a lot to be okay with about statue, but statue is just contextual on if you can actually support statue, I think. Who are you? I'm gonna have to look. I think this is Cleric. This is Cleric. I think Cleric sucks. I really don't like Cleric. I'm gonna put Cleric like ID. The problem is that 1 mana in the mid game is just not enough, and everything else Cleric does feels pretty bad. I gotta pull the game back up because I don't actually even know what Cleric does. What else do you have? The 2 heal 2 shield isn't bad. I will give it to Cleric. You know what? It's good enough to get you to the bottom of C tier. 2 heal 2 shield is potentially 4 survivability on a turn 2 or 3, which is not bad. But the rest of Cleric's sides are pretty awful. Knight, similarly, I'm gonna put Knight slightly above Cleric. I just don't see this guy at a time where he's pickable, I think. Exert 3 is kind of hard to play, but the rest of him's okay. And then Guardian can go D tier. 2 X's and a lot of sides that just don't feel very good on a gray hero. No thank you. No thank you, Guardian. Alright, we'll go into the reds now. Almanac, scroll down. So in the reds, again, remember, I guess think about it like this. Your orange and your yellows are typically going to be your big carry damage dealers. Your grays are going to be supporting them, your reds are going to be supporting them, and then your blues are going to be either supporting or carrying, depending on which one you end up with in your build. But we have Druid here, 7 HP, 2 manas. This is Growth, which is 2 damage and then +1 after you use it. Shield Growth, and then a Cleanse Heal, and the spell is 3 mana, 1 to all enemies, heal 1 to all allies. Fae has 2 heal 1 boosts, 2 1 damage weakens, 2 heal 1 mana gain 1s, and Circle, self-heal to allied sides this turn, and it costs +1 every time you cast it. Importantly here, Fae has 5 HP. Herbalist, 2 mana, 1 heal regen, add growth to a side, 1 damage poison single use, and then the spell is 1 mana, deal 1 damage or heal 1, 7 HP. Vampire has, this is 2 damage self-heal, 2 mana, 5 heal. This one's important. This is heal 1 to all other allies, pain vitality. So Vampire loses 1 health and all other allies heal 1 and gain a max HP. 7 HP. Disciple, these are double use heals. This is a revive. This is +2 mana, and you get Glow, which is replace blank sides with heal shield 3. Also, Vampire's ability is heal 2 to all for 3 mana. Priestess, which has 7 HP. Do they all have 7 HP? I think all but Fae. Not quite. Anyway, Priestess has heal 1, mana gain 1, 3 vitality. This is 1 to all, and then this is heal and shield 1 to all dying ally for 2. Medic has heal 2 cleave, regen, cleanse, and then set a hero to 6 for 2. And Enchanter has add self-shield to a side or a target, self-heal to a target, and self-heal. Heal shield 1 mana gain, 1 boost, and 1 cleanse, and the spell is heal 3 flanking, so it hits top and bottom for 2. 8 HP. Okay. I mean, this one's actually going to pretty closely reflect pick rate. I think Druid is high A. I think Druid's really good. And I think Fae goes similarly in high A. If Fae had 2 more HP, Fae would be S tier. Or if Fae's heal 1, mana 1 was mana 2, either of those changes, Fae would be S tier. Herbalist is also going to go high A. I think that Herbalist's spell, if you combo it with Vulnerable, it'll gain damage from Vulnerable. So you can pretty easily end up blowing enemies away with Herbalist. It's surprisingly good. Like, shockingly good how much damage that spell ends up doing. There are a ton of combos that make Vine busted. It's almost enough to push Herbalist up to S tier. However, it's close. It's really close. I'm gonna reorder a little bit. The only reason Fae isn't higher is because of the 5 HP, because 5 HP is nothing. Fae gets shredded in the end game. However, the ability to boost allies is so powerful, and if you can up the boost in some way, it's insane. It's so much value so quickly. Especially you can combo with like Wizard, for example. Ooh. Anyway. Vampire's okay. Vampire can go middle B. I think somewhere around Gladiator is right. Probably right next to Gladiator, slightly more maybe. The ability to do 2 on your healer is good. The ability to heal 5 is whatever. The max HP gain is fine, I would say. It's not crazy. It's nothing to really write home about. I'm gonna put Priestess in like the top of C. Sorry, I skipped over Disciple. Disciple goes like lower C. Priestess goes top of C because Flash is sometimes a game winner. However, something I found is that once you start casting Flash, you're probably so far behind that you're dying anyway. A lot of times I found myself casting Flash and then dying 4 turns later, where if I had just sacrificed the 2 heroes that were dying, I could have done the damage I was missing with Burst. So it is a little unfortunate. I think healer sucks. Let me double check before I say that. You might not be healer also. What's your name? Medic, sorry. Yeah, I think Medic's pretty bad. I'm gonna put Medic in like C, and I'm gonna put Enchanter in like lower D. So for my money, what I want out of my Reds is the ability to contribute to offense and then also help on defense if we need it. Medic and Enchanter especially, are very bad at contributing to offense. The only way Enchanter contributes to offense is with the singular boost side, which you are much less likely to roll on this character, compared to Fae, who has 2 boosts and, importantly, 2 weakens. I did not mention this with Fae earlier, but Weaken is really strong, even at 1, because Weaken 1 stops an enemy from summoning. In a lot of cases. If an enemy is trying to summon, like, even on Hexia, if Hexia is trying to summon a demon, the Fae can do 1 damage and stop it, which is extremely powerful. So, Fae gets to go a lot higher than Enchanter for that reason, because Fae is also good outside of the boost, whereas this character, also problematic is the Cleanse. Cleanse 1 is just not enough. I think Cleanse is good to have on your run, but you need more than 1. You need at least Cleanse 2, and ideally more. And yeah, just generally speaking, I didn't even mention Disciple. I think Disciple could go a little higher because Disciple has 2 2-mana sides, but Disciple also has 2 dead sides because of the Revive. A lot of times early on in the fight, Revive is just an absolute nightmare, but sometimes it'll save you. Which, honestly, is why this character, Disciple, is not lower. So, yeah, I think that's it for Reds. I don't have a lot to say about them. I think that some Reds are really good and some Reds are very bad, and then Vampire is also here. That's how the tier listing for Reds goes. Let's go to Blues. Again, we pull the game up, we go bring it up, we go Almanac, we scroll down. Okay, I'm gonna rapid fire through this. You ready? Because I don't wanna be here forever. Jester, he has a reroll cantrip. He has a spell called Flick, which is 1 damage engage cooldown, and he has 3 mana and some singles. Maiko, the spell is decay and +1 to the target's sides. I should take a second here to explain how this works. So So if you give this to a spell that has 1, like so you cast this on a guy's side, he uses a side that has 1, say like a 1 damage cleave, it'll do 2 damage on this turn, it'll lose the -1, and then it'll decay down to 0. So it's a single turn boost, which then ends up making the side worse for the remainder of the fight. His sides are also 3 mana decay, 2 mana decay, 1 mana decay, and then some growths. Fiend, who has 3 and 2 mana pain, a 1 mana cantrip, and a spell 1 damage to all heroes and monsters for 1 with a cooldown of once per turn, and also 2 mana or 2 damage heals for himself. Glacia, who has 2/1/1/1/1 for mana gain and then a 1 damage weaken, and Chill, which is 2 damage weakened once per combat for 2. Caldera, 3 damage cruel, 2 2s, 2 1s with 1 damage, and 2 damage to all enemies that are damaged for 3. Evoker, 3 X's, a 3, a 2, and a 1, and drop, 3 mana, 4 damage to the topmost enemy. Sparky, who has 1 damage or 0 damage, charged single use, so it deals damage equal to the mana. His spell is kill an enemy with exactly 4 HP for 3, 2 mana or 2 damage mana gain there. And then Seer, who has 3 mana single use, Foretell, which is 3 mana for +4 mana on the next turn, 1 damage poison, 1 mana growth. Rapid fired there, hopefully you kept up. You can also look these up somewhere, I'm sure. But you can also pause, I guess, there. So, similar to the pick rate, Jester's like upper S. Jester might be the top of S. It's close. So, what's good about Jester is the reroll. Some characters in this game, as I've talked about, are strong because of having 1 specifically good side or 2 specifically good sides, and you get 2 rerolls. Jester adds a lot of likelihood that you can hit your specific side that you need, and on top of that, his spell is pretty good. It's 1 for 1, and it has engage on it, so you can use it to sneak around some enemies otherwise. And yeah, I mean, all around he's just really good for those 2 sides. The 3 mana is good and the reroll is really good. The rest of it's whatever, but it doesn't matter because he has a reroll cantrip. It's much more likely that you'll hit what you need with him, which is why he gets to go so high. Maiko, I think a lot of people sleep on Maiko. I'm gonna put him middle A for my money. Maiko's good because of that spore side. A lot of times fights will end before you start to feel the effects of that decay, because for that decay to be a bad thing, you have to roll aside, use the decay to get double effectiveness. Often you'll be using it on like a 1 damage cleave, and then you have to roll that side again for it to end up being a negative, which often doesn't happen because a lot of the mid-game fights are over in 3 or 4 turns. So the odds are in Maiko's favor that he's just giving you 1 mana boost for 1. But sometimes it bites you. Pretty infrequently though. It bites you on bosses though. You have to be really careful with him on bosses. Fiend. I have no idea what I think about Fiend. I think that this character would be way better if his ability didn't have cooldown. He does generate a lot of mana, but red spells don't really make up for it, and his spell isn't spammable, so you can go like middle B. Or like lower B, I guess, really. Glacia's good. I think that the blue tier 2s suffer pretty heavily from a lot of them being tough. So characters that may seem really bad, like Glacia, actually get inflated up to A tier because the rest of the blues are just horrific. The 2 damage weaken is pretty good, I would say. Being able to once per fight stop something from doing damage to you for 2 mana, pretty good. Or at least cut it off. Like any of the AoE attacks getting hit by that, like an Ogre's Stomp, for example, getting dropped to 0 is big value. You're saving like 10 HP off of that move, which is great. Caldera, I mean, similar to Glacia, I don't think Caldera is great compared to all the other heroes, but compared to the blues, they're pretty good, so I'm gonna knock them up a little bit. He would probably go like C tier compared to these other heroes, but again, comparing Caldera to like Defender is weird. Is that Defender? I think that's Defender. You get the idea. I hate Evoker. Similar, almost the exact same reasoning that I hate Gambler here. I hate Evoker. You can just go listen to what I said about Gambler again, actually, if you're unsure. But I think Evoker is really bad. I also hate Sparky for different reasons. So if I'm gonna bring it back up for myself, but you won't be able to see this. The problem that Sparky faces is that 1, his spell is awful. 2, he has 2 single mana gain sides. As a blue, that's terrible, especially as a blue with a 3 mana spell. And his charge side has a lot of trouble being a big capstone spell because if he rolled his charge side on this turn, he didn't roll mana gain, which means that your mana gain has to come from your reds, which is spotty at best. And a lot of times, Sparky's sitting there going through all these hoops to do maybe 3 damage at best. It's tough. I think Sparky is really bad. Honestly, I'd put him below Evoker even, but not below Gambler. Lastly, Mr. Foretell himself, Seer. He's like here for me. He's like middle C. The thing about Seer is that he contributes to a long-term game plan. If you have strong defense and you can just sit there forever, Seer will eventually build up so much mana that you start winning the game, because 3 mana, you get back 4 next turn. 3 mana, you get back 4 next turn. As long as you're not spending it, you're now going up to 5. The next turn, 3 mana, you get back 6, then you go 6 mana, get back 8, 6 mana, get back 8 or 9, and you just start generating so much mana that he snowballs out of control. But I think that the use case is pretty tough. It's hard to actually make that work. But when it does work, it's kind of cool. So you can go into C tier for now. And that's all the tier 2s. I think it's safe to say the strongest tier 2 is either Trapper or Jester. Armorer is an honorable mention as well, because Armorer does their job super well. And yeah, fuck you, Gambler. I hate Gambler. Alright, let's hop back into the slice and dice here. And let's go down to the tier 3 oranges now. This is where it's going to get a little more interesting to talk about, because this is the late game stuff. Assassin here. 3 poison single use, 3 damage cruel, 2 damage engage ranged. Venom. Venom has one that I need to take a second to talk about, which is this one, Plague. So this gets 1 poison, and then it deals bonus damage equal to the total poison on all enemies, or all characters, I guess. Fencer, who has a 3 damage pristine, 2 1 damage to alls, 2 double uses. Sharpshot has a 5 damage version of Trapper's 4, 3 3s, and a 2 with Copycat ranged. Roulette, who also has an interesting one, 2 cleaves, 2 juggles, which are cantrips for 2, and then 7 damage, sticky mandatory death. So what happens is, if you roll this, you have to use it, and it kills you. It's an interesting one. Ludus, who has 6 HP and has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as his sides. He is just a D6. Dabblist, upgraded version of Dabbler. And Dancer, who has a reroll, 2 cantrips for 1, dodge, and this one, which is 1 to all enemies, Rampage, which can be reused if it was lethal, and Pain takes 1. Now, Pain is equal to the amount of damage you deal, so if this does 3, you take 3. Important to make sure you're aware of that. Okay, let's get to it. Assassin? I think is S tier. Assassin's really good. 2 damage engage is still strong, or was it 3? I think it's 2. The 3 damage cruel is really good, the poison option is really good. He really is just a great all-arounder. Offers a lot of ways to get out of fights very quickly. Venom. I'm gonna put Venom high A. The thing about Venom is Venom really, really easily wins Hexia for you. Venom is the sort of character that I see and I go, oh, right now my setup does not beat Hexia very well, and then I take Venom and I kill Hexia. It's nice to have the option, but poison stacking Hexia wins really well. Scrolled a little too far there. Fencer can go like upper B. Fencer needs support, which is why Fencer doesn't get to go to A. You need something to buff Fencer, like armor or a boost or something, but if you have that, Fencer slaps. Fencer kills things so fast for you. it's kind of crazy. Sharpshot is going to go, I think, like lower B. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about Trapper and gushing over the 4 damage execute, so why is Sharpshot with a 5 damage execute going lower? It's because the rest of the sides contextual to when you see Sharpshot are going to be worse. 3 damage ranged at the end of the game doesn't really do anything for you, and 2 damage Copycat has an opportunity to do something but is very dependent. The 5 damage execute is good, but it's less good because enemies in the end game start having more HP. So overall, I like Sharpshot a lot less than Trapper, contextual on when you see them as a result. Now, Roulette is interesting because I dunked on Gambler, and despite the possibility of Gambler having good items to help him out, despite that, I'm going to put Roulette pretty high. Despite my pick rate, I'm going to put Roulette like lower A because Roulette is a character that is worth working for. 2 damage cleave is good throughout the game. 2 damage juggles are good throughout the game. You need something that replaces the left side for this character though. That's the problem that you face with Roulette. You pick up like a growth sword or something else like that and Roulette pops off. Now, the reason I think Roulette gets to go higher up as well is because I think a lot of the time, by the time you'll have the item that Roulette needs by the time you see Roulette. It's easy to find it. There are a lot of left side replacers, and I'll usually take one because a lot of them are good in the early game, and then once you get into like tier 2 heroes, they become bad. And then you see Roulette and you go, oh hey, I can use this item again. That's nice. Having your items be efficient throughout is a great benefit, so I rank Roulette a little higher for that as well. Ludus. I'm not going to be too hard on Ludus. I actually think Ludus is okay. My biggest complaint about this character is 6 HP, but he's pretty low variance. You're always going to get some damage out of him, so I think he gets to go in a solid B tier. He's like a very middle of the road character. I want a little more out of my tier 3 orange. Similarly, I'm going to put Dabalist, I'm going to put Dabalist high C. I think that Dabalist is fine. Dabalist also would jump like 2 tiers if I had Normality, I think it's called. Or no, Simplicity is the item. Simplicity gives a +1 to all basic sides, which is every Dabbler side and Dabalist side, so a little better if you have that item, but on average, I think this character just doesn't do it for me. There are better options, and then I never take Dancer, and I think it's just because Dancer just kind of sucks, I think. And the biggest problem that Dancer faces is that the best side is that Rampage Pain side, but Dancer just kills herself by the time it becomes good, because you have to buff it up for it to really kill anything. So, I don't know. She's like a lower C. I think I'd put her a little higher than Seer, though. Seer. That's pretty good. Alright, let me pull the game back up here, and let's go through the yellows real quick. I'm progressing through this video faster than I expected. We have Barbarian. Barbarian's side that you haven't seen here is Death. I will also go through these real quick because the numbers are hard to read. 10 damage, he has 12 HP, he dies if you cast this. 8 pain, 6 pain, 4 pain, and then 2 bloodlusts. Leader, who has a 2 shield smith, 2 threes, a target hero can reuse their dice, and a 2 damage duplicate. Wanderer, 2 X's, this is inflict pain, so the next turn the enemy will hurt themselves for the number that's on their die, 1 time per combat. These have Era on them, which is +1 at the end of each turn, and then this is a quad use side, so you can use this die 4 times. Brawler, who has 3 damage steal, 3 damage self shield, and 2 damage rampage. Eccentric, who has this one, which is 4 damage descend, it hits the target below as well, and then 3 X's and 2 single use 4s, or like not single use, just 2 4 damage raw sides. Curator, who is the all keywords guy, 6 damage death, 1 damage era, 1 damage bloodlust, 1 damage charged, 1 damage steal, 3 damage pristine. Veteran, he does numbers, and then bash. Has a 7 damage exert though, despite my low pick rate. You know, I'm gonna for the remainder of this video, I'm gonna go through all the heroes now, and then I'm just gonna tier list them. I'm kind of sick of going back and forth. All right, so rapid fire here. Valkyrie has target ally cannot be killed, shield 2 rescue, which lets you reuse the side if it saves the hero, revive 2 and 4 damage death wish. Mimic, whose special is the top and bottoms are copies of the top hero's top side and bottom hero's bottom side. So for example here, if you had Assassin at the top, then Assassin would pass the 2 damage range to the Mimic's top side. You also have target hero can reuse their dice again, shield 3 duplicate to pass shields to everyone, and shield 2 copycat. He's an interesting one. Granite here has shield 2 repel, 2 damage steal, some 3 damage or 3 shield redirects, and a stun. Keeper, who has a 5 shield steal, 2 shield repels, and a self-heal self-shield to an ally. Paladin, 3/3, 4 cleanse, 2 mana, 4 heavy. Stalwart, I actually never see this guy, I feel like. Yeah, only 9 times in all my runs. But nothing you haven't seen before here. Twin has a special thing. They have 5 sides that are single shield, and they only have 4 HP, but you get a second character. You get a second twin who copies all the items on this twin. And then Poet, who has shield 1 cantrip, target hero reuses, shield 2 charged, and then shield 2 to all allies. Again, I feel like I never see this guy. Alright, the reds, we have Witch, who has her spell of Salve, which is heal 2 for 1. 3 mana, 5 cleanse, 1 boost, 3 cleave, 1 weaken. Forsaken, Bind, which is 3 mana, -4 max HP to an ally, and they're immune to damage this turn. Also 2 X's, a 2 of that vampire side, which is heal to all other allies for 2. And you know all that stuff. Wraith, who has Leech, kill an ally, heal 5 to all allies for 1. You have a cantrip dodge and a 4 damage self shield here. Shaman, who has heal 2, cleanse, cleave for 4, and you should know what all of this does by now. Big thing to note here is heal 10 and vitality 5. Prophet, whose spell is 4 mana, heal and regen 1 to all allies. I don't think I talked about regen, but some of the characters have it. They just heal for 1 when they have regen on them. You also have heal 3 rescue here, which is interesting. Doctor, who has 2 mana heal 2s. And we have Liquor, which is heal 20 cleanse for 4. This is like a you are no longer dying press. And then also has 1 damage to all heroes and monsters poison. It's weird to me that this character has poison on his allies, but he isn't the one with the cleanse, heal, cleave. Surgeon, who has just 2s across the board with shield, heal, and double use, or shield mana gain double use, I should say, and then he has revive the topmost ally for 4. Almost there. Lastly, we have Fate, who has 3 mana single use, heal, shield, 2 mana gain, and heal 2 spell rescue for 4 as the spell. If it saves a hero, you get the cost back. Okay, home stretch, almost there. We have Chronos, who is +2 mana growth, reuse their dice, cantrip reroll, and slow, which is 4 mana, 1 damage, weaken, cleave. Sorcerer, 3 cantrip, 1 manas, a 1 reroll, and 1 damage, poison, cleave. Weaver, who has 3/3/3 with single use on these 2 3s, and then a charged mana gain side, which is basically double your mana. He has a dodge, and he also has Crush, which is 3 damage for 3 with hitting top and bottom. Important side note here, if there's only 1 enemy left, this only does 3, it does not do 6. Wizard, who has perma boost for one of his sides, you give a permanent +1 to an ally, and then a bunch of 1 mana gains. And then his side is, or his spell is 4 mana, target hero uses their dice again once per turn. Warlock, 2 4 mana pains, a 2 mana with Bloodlust, and a blaze for 6, which is 13 damage for 6. Artificer, all single uses, heal, mana gain, damage, charged, 2 mana, or 2 poison, and 3 healing, or self-healing. And then he has 4 mana, 2 damage to all enemies. Ace, who I it took a while to unlock even after I hit unlock all. He has 1 mana, 2 mana pair, so if the last was a 2, you get 4 mana out of this, and then 3 mana triple. If the last 2 were 3s, you get 9 mana out of this, and then he has a boost for the turn for 3. Last one here, we have Ghast. 2 mana or 2 damage weakened, 2 mana, 1 mana, 5 mana death. He kills himself, and he has harvest. For 1, if you kill an enemy with 1 HP, you get 3 mana. Got all that? Good. I'll do my best to do reminders where necessary, but I'm gonna kind of breeze through the rest of this now because I don't want to keep you here forever. It's gonna reflect my pick rates from here on pretty heavily, but Barbarian's top of S. Barbarian is a game winner. This character, as long as you put some support to him, crushes. He does so much damage. He absolutely annihilates fights for you. Leader, despite my pick rate, is going to go low B. I think that your yellows often need to carry, and Leader is more of a support hero. I do think Leader pairs pretty well with something like Fencer, though. Important thing to note about the target can reuse their dice again. If you have a double use, and you've used it twice, and you give them to reuse their side, they'll be able to use it twice again. Wanderer. Okay. This is one that I know people are going to not like, but I do not like Wanderer. I'm going to put him high C. Here's my problem with Wanderer. Wanderer's quad use side is theoretically one of the highest damage output sides in the game. You can give it so many things to make it very powerful. The rest of Wanderer's sides are terrible. Wanderer is a one-note hero, and you basically need to pair him with some characters that have rerolls, or else you're going to start missing. I've had at least 1 or 2 runs on camera where my Wanderer just doesn't hit his 4x hit side in time and I lose the game. The era sides in theory are good, but due to the nature of Wanderer, by the time those sides have scaled to a point where I care about them, the fight's probably already over, one way or another. This is... I don't remember this guy's name. Hold on, let me pull the game back up. I think his name's not Scrapper. What is he? It's Brawler. Brawler is good. I think Brawler is a pretty high tier hero. I'm gonna give him like middle A. He's about as good as Whirl to me. I slept pretty heavily on the steal keyword because I slept because Brawler is bad, but... Or no, you're Brawler. Scrapper. Scrapper is bad. Where is he? I don't remember where I put him. I think I put him somewhere in middle C. Anyway, the guy with the 2-1... This is Scrapper, I believe, actually. Yeah, because he has the 2-1 damage steals. This guy's steal starting at 3 is much better, and he has rampage sides as well. He kind of pops off. Eccentric's fine. I mean, he's very item reliant, but by this time in the game, similar to Roulette, Eccentric is probably going to be supported. I think he and Roulette are like side by side pretty much. His base sides are also good. 4 damage is strong. I think Curator just doesn't have the numbers for me. I'm gonna put Curator a little lower. Probably I think Curator's worse than Wanderer. He's consistently okay, but he's never really good. He has a bunch of keywords though, which is fun, but I think that he's just not all that great to me. Similarly, Veteran, honestly about the same thought as Curator. He's consistently good, he's never great. He can go upper C, lower B. And then Bash. I'm gonna put him just above Dancer. I'd pick Bash over Dancer, but at the end of the run, I think Exert is a lot harder to justify. 7 damage is a lot of damage, but it's not win the fight damage. You're not killing Hexia because you played 7, whereas a lot of times you'll kill early game bosses off of the 3 or 4 damage Exerts. So I think Bash falls off a lot. The stun is okay though. He's more of a support hero though, which, similar. He's just a little bit worse than Leader in my mind. He's more of a defensive character than he is an offensive character, I think. Okay, now I'm gonna make another tier here. Add a row above. And this is gonna be the Valkyrie tier. And I'm gonna make this one, I'm just gonna go pink with this one. Valkyrie, I think, is very close to the strongest hero in the game. Valkyrie, the death defy sides are insane. Being able to go pick a hero, they live this turn guaranteed, is so much value. Valkyrie also has the added benefit of making Barbarian unkillable. So with the correct setup, Barbarian can use his death side and deal 10. And then if you have a reuse from someone else even, he starts doing 20 damage in a turn with the setup. It's win. Like, this combo, Valkyrie Barbarian, wins you games, hardcore. She has a downside of having a revive side and an X side, which are pretty bad, but the rescue is good, both of the death defies are good, and even the death wish is good. Valkyrie has like 4 super high impact sides and 2 underwhelming or X's, so Valkyrie gets to go pretty high. Mimic is really hard to rate because Mimic is going to be contextual on how good your other characters are. I'm actually just going to put Mimic in the statue tier because Mimic is entirely dependent on how good your blue and orange give him. So he's generally pretty good because he has a give an ally another turn, but it really depends to me. Like, I'm gonna put Granite in like, I'm gonna put Granite top of B, probably a little lower than Fencer. The problem I have with Granite is every time I pick Granite, they just get one shot by the dragon because the dragon's heavy comes in. And I thought about this and I was like, oh, well, that just must be unlucky. However, what I realized is that Granite actually is not very defensive. Here, let me pull this back up for you real quick here. Granite is not a particularly defensive hero in boss fights. They have the redirect and they have the stun, but these don't really save you much health compared to something like Keeper, who has a baseline 5 and it's steel, which we'll talk about in a minute, or like Valkyrie, who just says don't die, right? Or Paladin, who has potentially 6s and 4s for self-healing and shielding. So I think that overall Granite is just not a particularly defensive character, and stun is pretty bad against bosses. So particularly in the final boss, I think Granite falls off super hard. Your gray hero is probably not having a whole lot of shielding done from other heroes for steel to be a good thing on this character. So, you know, that's that for Granite. I think I'm gonna put Keeper, like, I really don't care about Keeper, I gotta tell you. I think Keeper can go middle B. The thing that Keeper does have going for them is the steel shields means that if you have another character who can provide some shielding on a turn, or even if you're just bursting shielding and you roll the steel shield, you can freely block for Granite, or sorry, for Keeper, and then pass that shield over through the steel to someone else, which is cool, but pretty niche. I'm gonna put Paladin in C. I don't really like Paladin. I think Paladin is hypothetically okay, but he's far too defensive for my tastes. Knight, even though I just went over it, I have to look again at what Knight does. It's been so long. Right, similar, I already had this thought. Cleave shielding for 2 is usually too low. You need to survive big hits in the endgame. W shielding for 2 is okay if you buff it, but again, I'd rather just buff damage. Exert 5 is, at this point, it's just kind of bad. You've fallen off. I'm gonna put him just below Paladin. Actually, I'm gonna put him like, I think he goes a little bit below Bath in my mind. I think Paladin goes somewhere around here. Twin goes in statue tier. Twin is entirely contextual on if you have items that make Twin useful or not. Twin is terrible if you have bad items. Twin is great if you have good items. Poet's fine. I mean, Poet, I just don't see him all that often, which is why his pick rate was low for me. I'm gonna put him like, right here. I think that's about correct for me. Alright. So I've thought a lot about these reds, and it's hard for me to rank them because the tier 3 reds, their spells are all pretty much defensive, and being defensive is awkward. That's all there is to it. It's really awkward to have defensive-based characters. I'm gonna do my best to rank them here, but they support by keeping your allies alive, and I think that that's often not all that useful because you're already doing that with Gray. So, and Gray is proactive survival through shielding, whereas this is often reactive through healing on turn 2 and beyond. So it's a question of how good are the Reds at helping you on turn 1 and 2 when nobody is dying. And the answer is, let's see. Witch is pretty good. I actually like Witch a lot. Cleanse is good. The 1 mana heal too is pretty good. But even still, I think Witch goes somewhere around like, yeah, somewhere around Ludus feels right to me. Ludus or Vampire. I strongly do not like Forsworn, Forsaken, whatever this character's name is. This is going middle D. The problem with this character is you have 3 dead sides, and her spell is mediocre. But I recognize that this might be a playstyle diff, and I'll talk about that when I get into blues. I think that Wraith is probably the best of the tier 3 reds, and I'm just going to put it high B. I think it's about the level of Granite. So Wraith has the cantrip dodge, which is nice. You can just be rolling for a better side and then have this character take 0. 4 damage heal is good. The leech spell is also not that bad. You may think it's terrible because kill an ally, right? But when you kill an ally, the enemy's attacks will still target them, even though they're dead, and then they'll just cancel. So if you have an ally that's absolutely going to die later in the fight, you can instead leech them and then heal everyone else up. It can help you finish out hard fights, which is good. Shaman goes like right next to Witch. I think that Shaman brings something nice, which is the Cleave Cleanse, but otherwise, you know, it's whatever. Prophet similarly can go somewhere in the middle. Prophet is nice, that spell, which is the heal 1 or heal 2 regen, it's heal 1 regen. You can start to outscale bosses and their damage by just healing and casting that spell a bunch, but mana gain on these spells is kind of hard, I find, so I think this character's solid B. Similarly, Doctor goes in somewhere in the B. Probably right next to Prophet. Doctor brings two heal manas, and Doctor brings good regen. Doctor also brings the really bad poison 1 to all allies and enemies side, which I think is pretty awful. Can maybe work with Venom though. And Doctor brings an X. His spell is also okay. You just go, hey, are you being petrified or are you being poisoned? Not anymore. And then lastly, I'm going to rank Surgeon and Fate at the bottom of C. I think Surgeon could go a little higher, but Surgeon is pretty bad because I think his spell is really bad. Operate, you've probably caught on by now, but I think that Revival is typically not that good. Usually if I'm spending turns reviving, someone else is dying while I'm reviving because I'm passing the turn to revive more or less, so I'm not a huge fan. And then Fate's numbers are just too low. That's all there is to it. All you have to do to make Fate good is, let me double check this. Fate has, let me bring it back up for you as a refresher. If this side here, this heal shield 1 mana gain was a 2, I think Fate would go a little higher in my tier list, but 2 single use 3s and a dodge token on this character and a bad spell, not for me. Alright, that's the reds. Let's wrap this up with the blues. Again, I'm just going to kind of go through these quickly now because I'm pretty firmly cemented in my thoughts here. Kronos is the reason that the Valkyrie tier exists because I think he's actually a little better than Valkyrie. Now, this is a playstyle thing, but I typically let the blue heroes fall into the supportive role because they're pretty good at it when they bring the reroll tokens. Anything that brings rerolls and just brings general value like Kronos does is good. So Kronos brings you the ability to reroll more, which lets you hit what you need to hit for your other characters, or just juggle more if you're trying to build around juggling. And Kronos brings the ability to give an ally a reuse of their ability, which is huge. He also brings a dodge token to help himself out, and growing mana gain. And on top of all this, he brings what I would argue is the best spell in the game, which is 1 damage cleave with weaken. You can end up weakening so many things with this and save yourself so much HP. I think that the only downside of Kronos is that you have to take a mana gain focused red like you can't take Witch to do well with him. You need to take like Doctor or Shaman, who has 2 mana, 2 heals on them. I think Shaman has that. You need to bring someone who can give him 2 mana to go with his growth to proc his spell, or else you end up not ever casting it. But no, I think Chronos is disgusting. I think this character is absolutely out of this world. Sorcerer gets to go in S tier. I think Sorcerer is also really good. Similar reasoning. Sorcerer can go right around Juggler. Sorcerer brings the Cleave Poison spell, which is very good, and Sorcerer brings a reroll. Sorcerer does have 2 X's, but I don't mind it, and I think it's because the rest of his sides are just cantrips, so it doesn't really matter. I don't need to roll anything particularly, but this guy starts to let you outscale fights and spam poison and cleave enemies down. He does a lot of work. However, Sorcerer is, and this is one, I haven't made a lot of mentions of difficulty modifiers, but Sorcerer is particularly bad if you're playing the Stitch modifier, where the highest damaged enemy heals for 2, because it takes significantly more casts of his ability to start poisoning down bosses. 3 becomes 1 instead of 1, which is a lot worse. Okay. This is... what's your name? You're Weaver, right? This is the guy with the crush. I think Weaver goes like... he's like here, I would say. He's like... put him maybe there. So, the problem that Weaver faces is... let me double check this before I say this. I believe... yeah, okay. So the problem that Weaver faces is a lot of his mana gain is single use, and you use it to cast his spell, but then you don't have mana banked for the crush, and his spell is really good. Or sorry, for the charged, rather. His mana gain charge side. His spell is really good. It's 6 damage for 3, which is a crazy rate, but he needs support from some other red, or maybe Dabblist even, to give you the mana to help him consistently hit those charged hits to start winning. But if you have that, I think he's really good. If you don't have the mana support, like you picked something else, you didn't pick like Doctor, you picked like Witch here, he starts to have a lot of trouble actually getting his mana gain going to start ramping up to crushing whole fights. But he's really good if you have the support for him. Wizard, again, Wizard is like a very contextual guy. I'm gonna put him somewhere around here. High B. Wizard's permaboost, if you put it on an ally that has anything that makes good use of it, is insane. Wizard's permaboost on like Fencer, on Whirl even, starts to become very powerful. Even putting it on like Armorer can be good, or Herbalist if you're running, or not Herbalist, sorry, the other one, Fae. But more often it's Fae gives a +1 to the permaboost, and then the permaboost is for 2. Any temporary +1 you can give him, or anything higher than that, you start pumping out like +3 permanents to your sides. He starts to get really powerful, but you have to have someone who's actually able to make use of it with multi-use hits. Otherwise, he's actually really bad because all of his mana gains are 1. He does do really well if you have the mana gem, which is the level 8 item, which gives all of your mana, or sets all your mana to 2, I believe, all your mana gains, but he's a little hit or miss, which is why he gets to sit in the B tier. Sorcerer goes A, or this is not Sorcerer, sorry, this is Warlock. Warlock goes like middle A. Warlock is different than the others because the other 3 or 4, I would call the blues we've ranked so far, it was 3, it was 4. They were all supportive blues where they're like re-rolling and they're giving you reuses and they're giving you mana passively, or they're boosting. Sorcerer is, you build mana, he nukes enemies. 6 mana, deal 13 if you build around him. Whew. He blows away enemies. He like half health bosses and shit. So Warlock's really good for that. But he does need a little bit of support. He needs some healing, he needs some shielding, he needs something to make it so he doesn't kill himself. Thimble maybe. And if you have some AoE to proc his Bloodlust mana better, also very good. But I'm a big Warlock fan. I think I'm going to put all 3 of these in D tier. I think Artificer's really bad. I think this guy's really bad. And I think Ghast is really bad. I'd put Ghast somewhere around here. So let's talk about it. I think that Artificer is really bad. There's like one item that makes him okay, but Artificer is great right up until you reach the boss, and then he gives you 8 mana and then just fucks off, pretty much is how it feels, because his spell does not help you on the boss. However, if you're okay with that, I think he's alright. Guy Fawkes here, what's his name? Ace? I've never really played with this guy, so it's a little unfair for me to just rank him so low. Here, I'm going to put him actually down next to Evoker, because he has the same problem as Evoker. His spell is good, similar to Evoker's for the time that you have it, but he has 3 X's, and if you miss, he's like, you're rolling 1s or 2s, it's tough. But the ability to give your allies boost is really good. If he just had more than the 1 triple, he'd be great. And then I actually think I'm going to come around on Ghast over time, because I played a run not too long ago where I had Cultist and I had the skull that gives mana on death, and I was just having Cultist kill himself every turn for mana and give me so much mana that I won the fight. I think Ghast can be okay for that. However, when a unit dies, you lose their spell, so you lose access to his really good spell, and suddenly it starts to be a little bit of a problem. I think Ghast is good if you have a good spell item, like you have, was it Bolt, I think, or maybe Slice, and otherwise I think he's pretty bad. I got through this pretty quickly, actually. So this is roughly how I feel about him right now. Within the tier list, it's not entirely ordered. However, the D and the Valkyrie and the S tier I think are about as correct as it's gonna be for me. Highest ranked A is highest ranked red is Herbalist in A. Yeah, the B tier and the C tier are pretty nebulous. I think you can move some of these guys up like Wanderer, some of these guys down. But generally what I value in the characters right now is I value consistency and don't screw me over. I want characters to have like 3 or 4 good sides, and then ideally 2 okay sides. Like for example, Eccentric has 3 pretty good sides, and then you can give him items to fill out the rest, which is why he ranks a little higher than something like Gambler, who has, well, you know. I think it's worth noting, by the way, if Gambler was a 5, a 5, and 4 X's, I would probably like this character more. Or even like a 4 and a 4 and 3 and 4 X's for the time you see him. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up because I need to stop talking. I've been talking for 90 minutes now, just non-stop. And yeah, I like doing tier lists like this because it helps me gather my thoughts. I think I'm going to start spreadsheeting my opinions on the characters and like synergies and things like that as well. I really want to put a lot of time into getting up to the 10 on the hard win streak. But for now, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for watching if you made it all the way. I really appreciate it. Glad you enjoyed listening to me ramble for 90 minutes. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.